Hi everyone, my name is Karen Henson. I'm the Compliance Director and Senior Women's Administrator here at SBU. If you're a returner, then you probably know me. If you're a new person, you might know my name. But I'm in charge of all NCAA eligibility. If you have academic issues, I can help you with that. So we just need to be best friends because I'm the person more than likely, me or Mike Woolboy, you probably will spend a lot of time at both places if you have issues. And also, if you are 17 years old, then the packet that you're going to have to complete will have to have a parent's signature or a guardian's signature. So if you are 17, you need to come to my office. And my office is located on the second floor up in the Wellness Center. I'm the first door once you come in into the main offices. My door is the first one on the right. So I'm the first person that you should come to if you need help. I want to make sure that everybody's registered with the Eligibility Center. So if you're new and you don't know what I'm talking about, you probably also need to come see me or talk to your coach, and they will show you how you need to set up and get an Eligibility Center number, because everyone that plays must have an eligibility number. So you have, and you can't start practice until you have that number. Now, if you haven't had your school upload your final transcript, or the SAT, ACT is not required at this time due to COVID, but if there's something you're missing, you have 45 days to get it in. You can practice with a team, but you can't compete until you get everything cleared. So it's better just to get on everything and get everything uploaded and sent in. So if you have any issues that way, you need to come see me or talk to your coach. Your coach will probably have you come see me. So my door's always open, so come see me. I can typically help you. Now we're going to get into eligibility rules. The main thing is you have to pass 9 hours every semester to stay eligible. So if you have to pass 24 in a year. So if you only pass 9 in the fall and 9 in the spring, you're going to have to make it up in the summer with 6 hours. And when you come in fall, you must maintain that you have a 2.0 or above. And if you don't, you can still practice with a team, but you will not be able to compete. So it's very important that if you're not eligible to compete, you can get healthy in the year, because we look back at it. We look back for a year. So basically, if you're not eligible in fall, once December comes, then you can look back at fall and spring of the last year to get eligible. So it's very important if you can just pass 12 hours every semester and maintain a 2.0 or above. That's the ultimate goal. If you have any issues with that, or you're struggling academically, come see me. I can get you help. There's a lot of study groups, things that can help you to get caught back up. One thing that you cannot do is drop below 12 hours during the semester. If you drop below 12 hours, then you will be removed from the team, because you have to maintain that you're enrolled full time. If you want to drop a class and you're not going to go below 12 hours, you have to get my signature. So all athletes have to get my signature or Mike Pitts, who is our AD, his signature. And typically, if he signs off on one of those, he usually calls me if I'm not in the office. So anyway, so when you take it to the registrar and you don't have my signatures on it, they're going to tell you to go get my signature. Or sometimes they'll call, and if you're on an online class, they'll send an email to, and I can approve it dropping through an email. Remedial classes. So if you take remedial classes only count in the first year. So if you have to take like English skills or like math literacy, which is below a college algebra, you can only count those remedial classes in the first year. So make sure that you get all those remedial classes taken within the first year, because they do count towards your hours for NCAA. If you take them after that point, they do not count, and you will have to take a class on top of that. So instead of taking 12 hours with a remedial class, you'll have to take 15, and only 12 will count, and your remedial class won't count if you're in your sophomore year. If you have to repeat a course, the NCAA says a D is passing. So if you are required by your major to get a C in a certain class and you made a D, you will have to take, and you're having to repeat that class, you've already got credit for the 3 hours that you've taken with that D. So you'll have to take that. So you'll have to take 12 hours plus that additional 3 hours. So you'll have to take 15 hours, and only 12 will count. Now, if you get a higher grade in that class, and let's hope you do, it will count. It will increase your GPA, because that, let's say that B will replace that D. So your GPA will go up, but not your hours. If you're on academic probation with the university, then you're not eligible to participate in games. You can still practice with a team, but you can't compete. So, I mean, it's better to try to stay off probation with the university, but if you do and there's a reason and you feel like you had a legitimate reason as to why you're on probation, then you can appeal this to the provost in a letter, and they will hear your letter, and they will either put you on a like academic difficulty and get, and put you on probation for academic difficulty. That way you can still compete. So it is doable to, and I've seen him give a lot of not let people be on probation. So, and you must declare your degree by the 5th semester, and by the 5th semester you'd have to take all degree applicable classes in order to meet your degree, because we really want you to graduate. That's the whole purpose of going to college, is to graduate with a degree, not just play football or basketball. So it's very important that you declare your major and take classes to complete that degree. You have 10 full-time semesters in Division II to compete 4 seasons. Division I has a clock, but Division II goes by semesters. So you have 10 full-time semesters to compete 4 seasons. And if you go beyond that, there are some waivers since we've had COVID, and we were able to get some waivers for. And so anyway, you can definitely go beyond the 10 semesters, but you need to just talk to me about it or your coach about it, and we'll see where you land on that to see if you qualify for the waiver if you have to go beyond 10 full-time semesters. You can also receive a red shirt if you do not compete in your first year as a freshman. If, let's say that you get injured and you participated less than 20%, and it was a season-ending injury for that season, and you were not able to come back, then you talk to Mike Wilhoy, and we could possibly get a medical hardship approved. And you can redshirt once, and you can medically redshirt once. Now, this is if you decide that you want to transfer because you're not happy, then you can contact me, and I will put you on the transfer portal. Now, a coach, if you're on scholarship, the coach can deny the one-time transfer exception, and that you would have to sit the next place that you go to. Now, there is an appeal process. Do you feel like the coach is not being, like it's more of a personal thing, and you can appeal, and Dr. Shriver has a committee, which is outside athletics, and they will hear your appeal to see, and Dr. Shriver's actually, their group can overturn the coach's decision to deny the one-time exception, or they can side with the coach and say, no, we're not going to give you that. But we have to put you on the transfer portal 7 days after you ask permission to be put on the transfer portal. Now, if you are not on scholarship, then you can transfer immediately, and as long as you meet all the eligibility requirements to transfer, then you would be able to play. You can't speak to another university until you're on the transfer portal, and so that's very important too. So if you really can't make amends and you want to transfer, come see me or send me an email. But to be eligible to compete at the next institution, you have to be eligible to return to SBU. So that's very important. So grades are very important, and so we do have an inter-conference transfer rule. If you receive aid in your sport and wish to transfer within the conference, you're required to sit out a year. So if you do not have a scholarship, then you can transfer and not have to sit. I think the inter-conference transfer rule might be going away, but as of right now, it's still in place. But there's been a lot of talk about, because not a lot of conferences have it in place, and so it's being talked about, but right now it's still in place. All right, we're going to talk about some rules education. The main thing is we don't want you to gamble. It's permissible for student athletes or athletic staff members to gamble on sporting events. If you want to be involved in a fantasy league, it's okay if you don't pay to play. But if you pay an entry fee, as long as you don't receive prizes, then it's permissible. But if you receive $300 and you go around bragging and it gets back to me, then we're going to have a conversation. Tobacco use. Any type of tobacco use is prohibited by the NCAA and SBU, so follow those rules, because if I see you, we will also have a conversation. For football, volleyball, basketball, we have tickets to get into the games, and all athletes may receive up to 4 complimentary tickets to each home event. You must put their name down, the people that you want to attend your game, and they will have to sign off on them once they come into the game. Coaches get sheets, and you fill them out the whole week prior to your game, and then it'll be at the ticket booth, so when your people arrive, they can just sign in and they'll get a free ticket. Another thing that is permissible is an occasional meal at the home of a staff member or booster. But the booster cannot take you to a restaurant and buy a meal for you. They can cater it into their house. They can take you to the park. They just can't take you inside a restaurant, because the NCAA thinks that's showy, and so that's impermissible. You can't receive special discounts, payment arrangements, use of someone's personal credit card, a booster, or free or reduced cost of services, loan of money. You can't receive anything like that from coaches, boosters, anything that has to do with our athletic department. Boosters can provide you with employment as long as they pay you the going rate and the same as their other employees that perform the job. So they can't just say, hey, I'm going to hire you and you never do the work and they pay you, because that's impermissible. SBU will provide you with travel expenses when you're away games, pregame meals, anything that has to do with your team, like away contest or home contest. They will provide you with everything that you need. I know that, in the news there's been a big talk on the name, image, likeness, and I'm going to be posting a name, image, likeness quick guide soon. So it will be on our athletics page. But I'll give you a quick rundown so you'll know what you can and cannot do in regards to NILs for SBU. You can profit from your own NIL. So if you want to host a camp, that's permissible. The first thing you're going to have to do is fill out some paperwork with me, just so I know what you're doing, so I can sign off on it and make sure that you're doing everything the correct way. One thing the SBU is not allowing, they are not allowing you to state that you compete for SBU, or you cannot use the SBU logo or apparel unless you work with our branding company. We have a licensing company for our Bearcat logo, and as long as you work through them and pay the fee, then it's permissible for you to use the logo. But if you don't want to work through them, then you cannot state you work for or state you play for SBU or wear the logo or apparel. You can hire representation like an agent to secure an NIL for you, but it's very important that you fill out the paper and disclose your NIL with me. I will have a sheet for you to fill out so I can approve it before you enter into the agreement with any company. So, if you want to be a spokesperson for Bill Grant Board, and I would just need to approve it before you sign off on that and do that. Now, SBU nor your coaches can provide compensation for your NIL activities. That's very important too. Okay, so we have official visits that incoming prospective student athletes come to campus. You can be a student host, and only one student athlete per day can serve as an official host for each prospect. So if you're a freshman, you would have to be a qualifier to host. The coach can pay you a maximum of $30 a day to host these prospective student athletes. And you're supposed to use that money to take them to do things like go to a movie or go for ice cream, and you've got to stay within a 30-mile radius, and you can't go buy them a t-shirt or souvenirs with this money. This money is to be spent on entertaining the prospective student athlete. You can't, the recruit can't just take your car and you give them money, and that's impermissible. So the whole point is that you're supposed to entertain that person. All right, now we're going to talk about countable activities during the in-season. So when you are in season, so fall sports is football, soccer, volleyball, cross country, you can spend a maximum of 4 hours per day and 20 hours a week in countable activities. That's practice, lifting, team meetings, skilled instruction, that kind of stuff. And you're required, coach has to give you 1 day off a week when you are in season. If you're exceeding this, you need to let me know, which I will do an audit, so don't be surprised if you get an email from me saying, hey, next week, I want you to log your hours for practice. So you're going to put in, not when you show up, it's when you start practice, because a lot of people show up early to practice. They might come 15-20 minutes early to warm up themselves before practice actually starts. So we want to know when practice actually starts. The coach steps on the field and starts giving instruction. It's because it's very hard for me to attend 16 different sports to monitor your activities. So don't be surprised. Just fill out when you practice every day of the week. I'm also probably sending it to 5 or 6 others in your same sport. So don't be surprised. Just fill it out, send it back to me in an email, and we should be good. If you're watching game film, that counts as an activity, so that would be not considered a day off. So game film watching would be part of your 6 days a week, and it would also count towards your 4 hours a day. In competition, so if you have a competition during that week, they consider a competition 3 hours, whether it takes 2 hours, whether it takes 6 hours. It's always considered 3 hours. Now, outside the playing season, you can spend a maximum of 8 hours a week can be spent on weightlifting, conditioning, and skilled instruction. And of those 8 hours, not more than 4 hours can be spent on team activities. So that's very important. So for you to know. So if you're out of season, and like for once baseball, softball, because they're going to be out of season, track, they'll start their 8 hours a week until they declare their days. And so of those 8 hours, 4 hours can be spent on team activities, and the rest spent on skilled instruction, conditioning, weightlifting, that kind of thing. And when you are out of season, they have to give you 2 days off a week. Now, voluntary activities, we're going to discuss this. On voluntary activities, a student athlete must not be required to report back to the coach or staff member. Activities must be initiated and requested by the student athlete. A coach can't tell you that he's going to meet with you or she's going to meet with you to work on something. You have to request the coach to help you. So it has to be initiated by you. And then the coach will tell you when they're available to help work with you. And during a voluntary workout, the student athlete's attendance and participation in the activity may not be recorded for the purpose of reporting back to the coach. So if a group of you guys want to go out and, let's say, kick the soccer ball around, a coach can't be there, and none of you are able to report back to the coach, and you can't be in trouble if you decide not to go to a voluntary workout. The next thing that we're going to touch on, which Mike Woolhoy, our head athletic trainer, he's going to talk about banned drugs, and he will discuss this. But one thing that's very important, if you're on ADD drugs, sometimes that causes you to test positive. So as long as we have it on file, we have your prescription in the file, and we can prove that, this was from a doctor and you've been on it since, for 5 years or what have you, then we can get that positive drug test reversed. Okay, let's see. I think that concludes my portion of the compliance thing. The main thing is, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to come by my office. I'm usually always there. My door's always open, so And if you just want to pop in and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I play soccer, I usually know, if you tell me your name, I'll tell you what sport you play. So just pop in, say hi, and you see me out, just say hi. I have 420 athletes, so it's hard for me to know everybody, but if you have any problems academically, if you have any problems eligibility-wise, NCAA-wise, or if you just don't know, I might not know the answer, but I'll probably know who does. I can get you in touch, or I can figure it out for you. So don't hesitate to come by my office, and I hope you have a great season, and everybody stays healthy, and that's all I have to say.
Hey everyone, this is Mike Wilhoy, head athletic trainer at Southwest Baptist. I'm going to go through some of the athletic training things that have to be addressed before the school year starts. It's great to have you guys back. Unfortunately, COVID still sticks around, and we're going to have some protocols that we have to follow. I just got those yesterday, so I'm going to run through some of those. Some of this will change because I'm still seeking approval and setting up some of the policies. Just some basic things that we're going to be doing. One, we will be setting up a COVID vaccine clinic on campus, so if you'd like to do that, just let us know and we'll get you on the schedule and kind of get you headed down the right road. Some of the things that have changed with COVID. One, if you get the COVID vaccine, there's going to be very little you have to do. The biggest thing you have to do is you have to be fully vaccinated, which means if it's a 2-shot series, you're going to have to be 2 weeks after the 2-shot series to be fully vaccinated. If it's a 1-shot series and you choose to go with the J&J, it's 2 weeks after that 1 injection. If you're unvaccinated, what we're going to have to do is, if you're in season, you'll be testing weekly and before travel. So, it shouldn't be that big a deal. It's just a matter of I don't know where we are testing yet. So I'm still working on setting some of that up. I will get more information kind of as we go. That'll still run the same. It'll bill through your insurance, and then I'm thinking that we will pay the balance on that. So that is still some things that are up in the air, but that's kind of the direction we're headed. If you're out of season, we'll be doing 25% every 2 weeks of all the unvaccinated people that are out of season. So that is a big change from last year, especially if you're in a sport that only tested every 2 weeks. And then quarantine rules will still apply. So for the unvaccinated, you will still have to quarantine just like we did last year. And then for unvaccinated, you won't have to quarantine, but you may have to test 3 to 5 days after your exposure. But you wouldn't have to be in quarantine during that time. That's one of those things that's still kind of up in the air that I don't really know where it's going to land on that. And then positive test will still be the same. If you get a positive test, you're out the 10 days, and then that return to play protocol is still the same. Have to see the doctor, all that kind of good stuff. Concussions. So this is the big thing that changed in 2006. So there will be a video to watch on this, and then that you will report to us concussion symptoms if you have them, and then we will follow that concussion protocol that we have. It's going to be a 4 to 5 day return to play, depending on the sport and contact levels. So obviously, like cross country is less than football would be, but the video will cover a lot of those type of things and cover the symptoms. You sign the concussion safety sheet during the physical process, acknowledging that you know and understand those things as well. Sickle cell is the thing that changed in 2008. So what you signed during the physical process is that you don't want to be tested for sickle cell, and you do know your status, and you're letting us know about your status. If you didn't understand that during the physical process and you've changed your mind and you would like to be tested for sickle cell, please just come let me know and we will work on getting that set up. And then there will be a video you have to watch during this as well.
The purpose of this video is to introduce best practices for all athletes while exercising, especially during intense workouts, with a special focus on the impact of exercising with sickle cell trait. You should be aware of your daily health status and related conditions that could impact your training, such as sickle cell trait status, asthma and cardiac conditions, acute illness, lack of sleep, suboptimal nutrition, as well as any relevant medications being taken. Injury is a possibility during all athletic activities. Even though conditioning sessions and high-intensity practice sessions should be designed to reduce the likelihood of injury and optimize your performance, athletes in these situations have experienced significant physical distress, collapsed, and even died. NCAA members often adopt rules and best practices that are intended to protect your well-being during these activities.
In an effort to reduce injury and illness, NCAA student athletes are required to complete a medical examination prior to participation. During this process, the NCAA also requires each student athlete to confirm their sickle cell trait status. Division III rules allow you to participate while awaiting results from the laboratory, provided that you complete additional mandatory education regarding the risks, impact, and precautions associated with sickle cell trait. Your institution will explain this process more in depth as it pertains to their policies.
Sickle cell trait occurs when an individual inherits a gene for sickle hemoglobin from one parent and a gene for normal hemoglobin from another parent. The sickle hemoglobin gene is more common in people of African, Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, or Far Eastern descent. Sickle cell trait is present in athletes at all levels of competition and ethnicities, including professional and Olympic sports. Because sickle cell trait does not make you sick, it is possible for you to have it and not know it.
I discovered my sickle cell trait status during my sophomore season. I had a really bad cramping episode in the first game. It was pretty unusual. I came in before halftime, and by the time I got to the training room, I couldn't walk. My body had completely locked up. I recovered after that, went into the second game. Similar issues, not as bad as the first. And then we had our bye week, and we had a pretty long, grueling practice. And then our training staff and some other people noticed that I wasn't myself, and I was really fatigued and stuff like that. And Craig, our head athletic trainer, came up to me and asked me if I'd been tested for sickle cell. And I said I wasn't sure, and then we went through the testing and found out that I indeed carry the trait.
Under normal conditions, student athletes with sickle cell trait can train and compete in athletics at the highest level of sport and can lead a healthy life without fear of developing complications. Exercise and sport are safe and, in fact, may be somewhat protective in individuals with sickle cell trait. Sickle cell trait is a lifelong condition that will not turn into sickle cell disease but will be maintained over time. Serious medical problems associated with sickle cell trait are rare, even during intense training. However, some athletes with sickle cell trait have experienced significant physical distress, collapsed, and even died.
Any athlete can collapse or experience exertional rhabdomyolysis during intense exercise. While most return to sport over time, athletes with sickle cell trait seem to have more problems recovering from rhabdomyolysis and should be attended to diligently and monitored closely.
The greatest risk of exertional collapse for all athletes is during conditioning sessions and the start of new practice periods. Your workout goal is to optimize your physical efforts while minimizing the risk of injury and illness. Workout design should consider your individual medical condition, skills, abilities, and conditioning level. Progressing your exercise time and intensity slowly during a 2-week period before preseason can help your body acclimate to the exercise load and prepare for the rigors of the sports season. All athletes and coaches can monitor distress by watching an athlete's posture during the workout. This color graphic depicts green, yellow, and red situations which correspond to a series of postures showing an athlete moving into a distressful and serious condition. Athletes unable to stand on their own from a kneeling position or having trouble walking normally under their own control during recovery should raise suspicion of distress, and additional medical intervention should be considered. Taking a knee during a workout can be a universal sign for the need for additional recovery. Exercise should not be used as a form of punishment in any athlete experiencing physical distress. To ensure optimal performance, you should stay hydrated by consuming water throughout the day. Do not wait until you're thirsty. Drink early in the workout, such as 8 ounces of water every 15 minutes during exercise, and incorporate sports drinks when possible. Replace your fluids lost during exercise by keeping track of your weight lost. In general, 20 ounces of fluid should be replaced for every pound lost during the workout. Monitoring your urine color is another way to assess your hydration. Lighter color is better. Dark brown urine should be reported immediately.
Knowledge of sickle cell trait status can be a gateway to taking simple precautions that may prevent exercise collapse and allow for optimal performance. Do you know your sickle cell trait status?
Mental health is a new initiative, or a newer initiative, that the NCAA has been pushing for. So during the physical process, you filled out a mental health screening sheet, and then on our physical sheet, there's some questions that are asked. So part of that is we have a policy that, if you meet certain criteria, you have to see a mental health counselor, or you have to see one of the counselors, hopefully on campus. I haven't heard where we're at on that. So some of this is still up in the air as well. So you may have a mental health referral that you have to do at least one visit. If that's the case, then just go to that visit. They will send me some communication on where you're at with that status, and then we will be good to go. But we'll be communicating with you on that on a basis. So like I said, the counseling is kind of up in the air. I know we still have Dr. Walkup, but they are working on adding another counselor, and then I may have some other options that we're looking at as well, depending on what the university does. During Karen's talk, she talked about, I'm going to talk about drugs and alcohol. So the two biggest drugs that I get asked the most questions about are ADD and ADHD. So with that is an NCAA rule. So if it's okay to take those medicines, but there is processes that you have to follow, because you will test positive for street drugs and things like that with those medicines. So they're okay to take, but you have to have a physician's note. So you have to see them yearly. You have to have the prescription signed by the physician. You have to have a note stating why they didn't use a non-stimulant medicine and the original testing that they used to diagnose you. So those are the 4 things that you have to be able to take the ADD and ADHD medicine. The benefit in having it on file is if the NCAA did come in and test, and you tested positive, we would be able to submit that right away, and you would never have to sit out. If you don't have it on file, we just have to sit you out until we get all of that information, and then you're able to return to play. With marijuana, the biggest thing, obviously it's legal in a lot of states. Legal medical marijuana in the state of Missouri is now legal. So from a state perspective, you can take those, but you will still test positive for street drugs and be subject to penalty by the NCAA. So, which I believe is a 6-month ban, because they are still not accepted from a recreational use and things like that in the state of Missouri, and from the IOC and things like that. Everybody saw Sha'Carri Richardson this year that tested positive, and she still had to sit out the Olympics. So from an athletic standpoint, still not legal. And then obviously all our street drugs, cocaine and all those things are banned, and all those types of things. Supplements are always a big question that I get, and basically if you submit anything to the NCAA, you are taking those at your own risk, and there's not much that I can do about that. So if you take a tainted substance or something like that and you test positive on a drug test with the NCAA, then you will be out 365 days and be subject to their bans, and there's really no fallback on that. So when we do drug testing, we'll do two different types of drug tests. If it's institutional, we'll do an institutional drug test during the school year 1 to 3 times during the school year. So usually 1 or 2 the first semester, 1 or 2 the second semester, and then kind of go from there. If it's a university test, usually we are testing for street drugs. If it's an NCAA test, usually they are testing for performance-enhancing drugs, and they can test for anything. Alcohol. So there's some stats on alcohol that I'll give you. Alcohol will decrease power, strength, and speed for up to 3 days, and will decrease performance by up to 10% for those 3 days. So drinking once during the week and binge drinking can negate up to 14 days of training. So that's kind of some stats on, like, hey, if you're working out hard but you want to go out and get drunk, it's basically negating it, and you're not really productive in your workouts. Marijuana is going to be in your system for up to 30 days, depending on what type of drug test. If it's urine versus saliva, depends on how well it will detect it. So like saliva will detect marijuana smoked earlier on, whereas urine will detect it longer and be in your system for a longer period of time. Obviously, the way our drug tests work is we'll do a swab test or a urine test, and they'll kind of screen it, and then it gets sent to the lab, and they'll tell us the levels and all of those type of things. Okay, sexual assault is another big initiative with the NCAA. So there will be a email that you received this week from Student Life that all the freshmen and transfers have to do, and that is part of our sexual assault plan. So that has to get done, and then second semester we will do some type of initiative where everybody all kind of have to be involved, and that will be our sexual assault attestation information. Obviously, any type of sexual assault through SBU is prohibited and will be punishable. There will be a video to watch during this that's kind of fun and unique.
If you're still struggling with consent, just imagine instead of initiating sex, you're making them a cup of tea. You say, "Hey, would you like a cup of tea?" And they go, "Oh my God, I would love a cup of tea, thank you." Then you know they want a cup of tea. If you say, "Hey, would you like a cup of tea?" And they're like, I'm not really sure. Then you can make them a cup of tea, or not, but be aware that they might not drink it. And if they don't drink it, then, and this is the important bit, don't make them drink it. Just because you made it doesn't mean you're entitled to watch them drink it. And if they say, "No thank you," then don't make them tea. At all. Just don't make them tea. Don't make them drink tea. Don't get annoyed at them for not wanting tea. They just don't want tea, okay? They might say, "Yes, please, that's kind of you." And then when the tea arrives, they actually don't want the tea at all. Sure, that's kind of annoying as you've gone to all the effort of making the tea, but they remain under no obligation to drink the tea. They did want tea, now they don't. Some people change their mind in the time it takes to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk. And it's okay for people to change their mind, and you are still not entitled to watch them drink it. And if they are unconscious, don't make them tea. Unconscious people don't want tea, and they can't answer the question, "Do you want tea?" because they're unconscious. Okay, maybe they were conscious when you asked them if they wanted tea, and they said yes, but in the time it took you to boil the kettle or brew the tea and add the milk, they are now unconscious. You should just put the tea down, make sure the unconscious person is safe, and this is the important part again, don't make them drink the tea. They said yes then, sure, but unconscious people don't want tea. If someone said yes to tea, started drinking it, and then passed out before they'd finished it, don't keep on pouring it down their throat. Take the tea away. Make sure they are safe, because unconscious people don't want tea. Trust me on this. If someone said yes to tea around your house last Saturday, that doesn't mean they want you to make them tea all the time. They don't want you to come around to their place unexpectedly and make them tea and force them to drink it, going, "But you wanted tea last week," or to wake up to find you pouring tea down their throat going, "But you wanted tea last night." If you can understand how completely ludicrous it is to force people to have tea when they don't want tea, and you are able to understand when people don't want tea, then how hard is it to understand when it comes to sex? Whether it's tea or sex, consent is everything. And on that note, I'm going to make myself a cup of tea.
Sexual assault crimes will be reported through your Title IX compliance person. So it would be, if we're over here in athletics, Gina Whitehead would be a Title IX person, and then Rob Harris would be the other person that you can go to. And then obviously all your coaches and things like that can be reported to as well. EverFi is the email you will receive, and I think they sent that out on Monday, and then get that filled out, and then, which is a university requirement done on my SBU, I believe. So obviously sexual assault is in the news right now, and we see a lot of reporting on it. So it says 90% of sexual assaults are on college campuses are someone that you knew. So 90% of the time you're going to know the perpetrator. So, and then 75% of all sexual assaults on campus involve alcohol. So I think the number one thing you will see from the video that's watched is if somebody has a drink of alcohol, they don't have the ability to consent. So it's just one thing you have to be very aware of. I think one other thing that I always tell people is when we're talking about sexual assault on campus, it is not a court of law. So when they're trying to prove sexual assault on campus, they only have to prove that something happened, not that it was actually sexual assault. So basically the victim says, "Hey, I felt uncomfortable with that," and then the university is basically just looking at it from a non-legal standpoint. Then they're trying to say, did something happen, did something not happen? It's not a court of law. So some stats, 1 in 2 women have experienced some type of sexual violence or sexual assault on campus or during their lifetime, and 1 in 5 women and 1 in 71 men have been raped, and then 1 in 2 women and 1 in 5 men have experienced some type of sexual assault. And then that's my stats and kind of my spiel. So if there's any questions, then things you need addressed before we get going, just let me know. My office is downstairs.